Hello. Okay, that's us. So, hello colleagues, my name is Lorraine Devlin. I am a classroom teacher in Glasgow and I am part of the STEP committee. So, I am here tonight to introduce you to, if I can find my notes. First, I'm going to say I really apologise for the technical difficulties we had when we launched the meeting tonight. There was a bit of an issue with the waiting room, but we're here now. So welcome to No Crisis Arrives Alone, Reflections on a New Relationship with Work with Claire Lavelle of the Hive of Wellbeing. This is our third in a series of online events, and we're delighted to note that this event, along with our previous two, is fully subscribed by teachers from all different sectors, from up and down Scotland and beyond. I'm here tonight to introduce you to Claire, but for a moment I'm going to speak to you about STEP, and this will give the latecomers a moment to arrive and for you to get comfy with some refreshments. Now, perhaps you've just poured yourself a cup of tea, or perhaps you're hosting an online event for a large number of people tonight, so you've just poured a glass of wine. But what Claire does in her own time is her own business, and this is a judgment-free zone. So I'll add that I'm reading from my notes, so don't forget to say anything, including my name. And due to the technical glitch before, I'm a bit more nervous than usual. So Scottish Teachers for Enhancing Practice evolved from the Association of Chartered Teachers in 2014. STEP is a grassroots collective of teachers who arrange career-long professional learning for other professionals. We are an independent, non-affiliated group, and this is usually where I ask people to get involved, but right now the committee is full, so we would appreciate your continued support through social media and through supporting our events such as tonight. Professionally, the committee has as diverse a background as our attendees tonight. We have teachers from all over Scotland, including the Highlands and Islands. The committee includes teachers who work in a range of different sectors and people at very different stages in their career, but we've all worked together tonight to arrange this event. In true Hive fashion, I was introduced to Claire via a colleague in Edinburgh with whom I had never worked. And we were very grateful when she agreed to facilitate workshops at our 2018 and 2019 conference, as well as a very warmly received Wellbeing event that took place here in Glasgow in August 2019. Many of you are here tonight, have come because you've heard Claire speak before, but some of you might not. So I'm going to promise you, and you can hold me, and I'm going to mention this again at the end, I'm going to promise you a very uplifting, practical evening, and something that's just the tonic to the changes and challenges that we're facing just now. For those unfamiliar, the Hive of Wellbeing supports early years practitioners, teachers and senior leaders through CLPL, CAT sessions and coaching, where they're asked to reflect on and reframe issues, moving towards the premise of feeling good, teaching well. Claire does all this through good humour, genuine kindness, and because of her teaching background, a real understanding of the challenges faced by the profession. As a testament to Claire's hard work and the effectiveness of her approach, she has been asked to deliver sessions at the Scottish Learning Festival and as part of the ongoing GTCS Wellbeing Wednesday programme. Now, as I hand over to Claire, I wanted to do two things. First, I want to encourage you to use the chat or to send questions anonymously through Menti so that you can get involved tonight. And if you missed the Menti code, that's going to be posted again in the chat. I'll also encourage you to tweet about tonight's event using hashtag StepPL21. Now, finally, I want to thank you, Claire, on behalf of the STEP committee and the people attending tonight for agreeing to speak and for being such a good friend to STEP, both personally and professionally. So, Claire, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful welcome, and what a tremendous accolade, which I would expect from STEP, because you're just such a fantastic organisation, and it is such a privilege and honour to be invited to speak yet again at one of your workshops. But it's also a real privilege to be speaking to each of you who have joined us this evening. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me today in my holiday home in Abu Dhabi this evening. It's well, no, I'm actually in Gilmerton in Edinburgh, but I mean, really, we could be anywhere. And I suppose that's been the beauty of some of this, that no matter what crisis has come our way, we have been able to connect. And tonight I wish to extend really warm connections to each of you this evening as we go through some of these slides. We knew that this was going to be really tough when this second lockdown came, and it has been really tough for each of us in our own way. But we knew, we got an inkling way back in January things were going to be tough when we heard that Joe Wicks was dusting off his lycra and hoovering his living room. We thought, oh yes, hello, here we go. And we weren't wrong. But only Joe is managing 3 sessions a week. Have you noticed? Very different from the first lockdown. And in all seriousness, it's been very different for us as well, been very challenging. And what I want to explore tonight is this impact it's had on you. It's been quite an endurance test. And although today there was some semblance of, well, getting back to normality, dare I say that, towards the end of April, it's still quite a bit of stretch. And I also appreciate that yesterday, with some senior pupils coming back to our secondary schools and some pupils coming back to our nurseries and primary 1 to 3, although there was excitement about perhaps, that semblance of normality, there was also anxiety perhaps around what's expected of us now. What about this testing? How on earth are we going to do all of this? And what are SQA now expecting of us? There's a whole host of unanswered questions for us that I know we will have our heads full of as we go through these coming days. But what I would ask you to do for this evening, I would ask you to relax if you can. I would ask you just to take some notes as we go through the session today. And I would ask you just to reflect on what this crisis has brought for you in terms of that relationship with work and what those opportunities are as you reframe perhaps a new relationship with work. But I do want to be honest with you tonight. I am concerned that if we don't take the time to decompress, if we don't take the time to reflect on our feelings and reflect on our emotions and the impact of that, at what cost? And therefore, if there's not going to be the let up in the expectations and the onslaught of the workload as we see coming our way, I do want us to consider, how do we take time for our own rest and recovery, which is not a luxury now, but is an absolute necessity as we move forward. The work will never be complete, it will never be done, and more on that a little bit later. But let's get started with the session just now. It does feel as if 2020 has just been a bit of a trailer to some of our experiences in 2021. Someone was saying to me just the other day, my goodness, Claire, I managed 13 weeks of lockdown on my own, but 6 weeks of lockdown in January coming to February has been really, really tough. So I do want to focus on these 3 themes today. This idea of no crisis arrives alone, but in fact, we've learned a lot about who we are as individuals and as educators, as individuals, but also at a collective level, who we are connecting with and who is in our team and our team of support. I also want to touch on this theme of the heart of a teacher. Our minds may be overwhelmed just now. Our bodies may be feeling it as well. The exhaustion is very, very real. But what about our hearts? Where are our hearts at this particular time? We are allowed to feel those emotions, but is there the time to process them and decompress at this time? Perhaps not. So how do we create that? And how do we create the connections that will support us to respond more from a heart-centered place? That's something I want us to reflect on today. So those of you who have heard me before and talking about some of these themes, I'm going to do things a little bit differently today when I approach some of these ideas. And I will finish with this idea of that relationship with work. In the same way we've got a relationship with another person, we've got a relationship with money, or we've got a relationship with another aspect of our life, such as food. I'm currently in quarantine from my fridge right now. It's been a tough lockdown. We have to also consider, what is that relationship with work? We are in any relationship, there are boundaries, there are expectations, and sometimes there are red flags. So what is it I want to consider regarding this relationship with work now as I move forward? And I've got this quote from Eckhart Tolle, because I really like this idea of being in the now. In this next 50 minutes, I want you just to be here now, connecting with yourself, connecting with some of the content and some of the ideas, but really connecting with yourself at this time and recognizing that the future doesn't exist. but we can create the future from being in the now and cultivating habits and cultivating thoughts that can support us at this time to create our new now and whatever that new normal is. But before we get to that, a bit of audience participation and perhaps a well-needed moment of light relief in this time of great stress and challenge and many anxieties. During the Christmas holidays, there wasn't much else to do but to watch the films and eat chocolate, and I did so well on both counts. And as we came into January and we heard about this lockdown, I started to recall on certain days some of those films I've been watching. One film in particular has resonated with me, which is Groundhog Day. It felt like many days in January the 1st right up to January the 4007th. I'm sure that's when January ended this year. There were all the to-do lists. I just felt there was never enough time to get everything done each day, and it was the same old work, going for a walk, work, more walking, more work. But then there were hours when I felt a bit like George from It's a Wonderful Life, and I thought, you know what? Maybe there are opportunities to look at this differently, to do life differently, and to feel a bit better about my circumstances. I mean, I've got a roof over my head, I've got my own health, I can go for that walk. I mean, things perhaps are a bit better than how I've been viewing them. So what I'd ask you to contribute today, if you're comfortable to do so and you're very happy to do that, is in the chat box, and looking at ourselves now in this time in February, which film title, song title, book title, or television series title would you use to describe how you're feeling about that relationship with work right now? So any film title, song title, anything at all that occurs to you, you want to just pop it in the chat box and I'll look at some of the comments that come through. But it's a good way to check in, it's a good way to connect. So please feel free just to pop in anything there. Angela's got How to Get Away with Murder. If someone could just check in with Angela, please, just now. We're a bit concerned about Angela. Yep, absolutely. I feel you. I feel the pain. Show me the way to get home. Thanks, Julie. Carolyn, Sliding Doors. Yeah, lovely. How do you keep the music playing? Very good, Linda. Yep. Pat's got Brave. Kelly's got Psycho. I need to check in with Kelly. Yeah, is that you, Lynn? I think so. Yep. Pilohani, Lost. Yeah, that feeling of just what's next? Where have we to start? Where to begin? And never mind beginning. Where's it going to end? And Wendy's got Never-Ending Story. Yep. Deborah's got It's the End of the World as We Know It. Yep. Someone had said Armageddon to me recently. Yep. Kasabian, You're in Love with a Psycho. It seems we're very attached to our work, and yeah, it seems to be sometimes not giving us the treatment we would like sometimes. Yep, I get it. Work by Rihanna, just work, as I understand it. This time next year, Brogan, lovely, hopeful. And Angela's somewhere over the rainbow, so again, a hopeful message there. And maybe another couple I'll take just now. Someone is Sleepless in Trinent, which is a really good take on that Tom Hanks film. Loving that, Sarah. Yeah. And Donald is in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So there's a real range of responses there. And it gives me a flavour of where people are at just now. I get a sense, and understandably, and I've been getting a sense from all the coaching sessions I've been engaged in just now, with that sense of just being overwhelmed, that sense of we can't stop, we've got to keep going, that sense of what's coming next, feeling a bit lost, but also the hopeful messages of, you know, we'll get through this, there's maybe something over that rainbow, as Angela said, somewhere we can get to. So I'm going to keep moving forward during the session just now. As always, I've got tons of slides and tons of opportunities as well for audience participation. It's not important to me to get through slides today. It's more important to engage with you and to allow you those opportunities to reflect with a few kind of coaching exercises as we go through. So let's get real. The lockdown fatigue is very real. And it's not because you are lazy, and sometimes we can think that about ourselves. God, I'm just being so lazy, I just need to pull myself together. No, it's not just simply a case of pulling yourself together. You've been pulling yourself together for 12 months now, and it's natural for you to feel absolutely fatigued. You've been pulling yourself together during holidays and times when you're supposed to be decompressing and resting, and that's not been afforded you. So you're not lazy. It's not that you're not working hard enough. It's not that you're demotivated. It's not that you're uncaring. No, it's none of these things. It's actually a lot to do with the reasons on the left-hand side. And one of the main reasons on that left-hand side, I would say, is being in that high state of alert. high state of alert regarding the ping that comes through on a Teams meeting as you are meeting with others, but you know there are other online activities you have to attend to. It's the high state of alert when you just want to top up with milk, but you've got to don the mask, sanitize the hands and go to the shop. This is not normal for us to be on this high state of alert in our working lives and in our daily lives. And what used to mediate the stress for us by going to the pubs, going to the restaurants, meeting up with friends and family, it's just not there any longer. So it's natural for us to feel so fatigued at this particular time. And we're in that fight and flight state a lot. And that is using up a lot of glucose, and that's using up a lot of brain power. And we're not as resourceful as we would like to be. A lot of us are suffering from that brain fog. And it's not because of aging or anything to do with that. It's to do with the fact that we are overwhelmed. And here are a few selfies that people have sent me. Well, they haven't really. Here are some stock images, but I would imagine if you were to send me a selfie, this is perhaps what it would look like for some of you just now. And so when we're in that constant or continual stressful state, how do we move along that continuum to the rest and digest response? Not keeping in fight or flight, but we move from fight and flight to rest and digest. So one thing I just want to ask you just now, just to reflect on and to consider for yourselves, but what might be the one action tonight or tomorrow that might lead you to moving towards the relax on the continuum, just moving just slightly away from that stress and just slightly more towards that relax? Would it be to do with your expectations of your work? Would it be to do with the expectations of yourself? Would it be to take control of a situation and assert what you can do just now and what you cannot do and what's not possible at this time and communicate that to others? What is it that's going to move you towards that stressful place, relaxed place rather? Because for me and for you and for everyone in education, this work will never be done. It will never be completed. And I even know that SQA will be asking and making demands, and yet it will never be done. It will never be finished. And therefore, when is enough enough? In a book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog, he says, let's accept the bottom line that the work will never be done. You will never get it all done. So what is manageable today? What is achievable today? And like an Olympian athlete, how do we build rest and recovery into our schedule? An Olympian athlete is training solidly, and yet they know to take rest and recovery. It's built into their programme. Now, I know we're maybe not training for our next marathon or the Olympics, whether it's going to be this year in Japan or even next year, who knows yet? I don't know if there is a final decision quite yet. However, we need that rest and recovery. How are we building that in, just as these Olympian athletes are doing at this time? I want to move to this slide just now, and I want to move to this idea of no crisis arrives alone, our first kind of main theme tonight. And I've been looking at a lot of the literature on disasters because I need a hobby and I need friends and I need connections and walks in the park really, really soon, guys. I need to get off this, I really do. However, in the literature I have been looking at, there is a real sense that when natural disasters or even man-made disasters disrupt the normal workings and community living or nations and how they are living their lives, there are such things as the pre-impact conditions, that what came with the crisis was what was in existence prior to it. There's also the way in which we were prepared systemically, and indeed the responses that we are making very much in an improvised sense to the event and the event-specific conditions. We've had to improvise throughout this whole 12 months. And often when I use this slide, when I'm working with schools and I'm working with different organisations, I ask them about what they've noticed in their communities. But tonight I want to be totally selfish. I want you to be selfish, or maybe it's part of self-care, and really reflect on who you were as a teacher before the pandemic and what kind of teacher have you become. I was talking to a head teacher just today. We were just having a chat, and she was saying to me, you know, Claire, I've realised that if you were someone who likes to be in control of your work and you like to have structure, this is going to be really challenging for you. This is going to have shaken your well-being to its foundation. And it makes me think about that idea of how have we changed as educators, as individuals. Also, your own systems of preparedness, and in moving forward, what's going to continue to serve you just now? And what have you noticed about where you've been responding from to these changes as they've come and gone over this last 12 months? Has there been a pattern for you in terms of the responses you noticed? And has anything amplified for you in terms of what you've realised about yourself and about your own learning. Over to you for some comments and some sharing. You don't have to answer all these questions. I ask lots of questions. Choose your favourite. Choose the one that resonates with you most. And I'll look out for some of the conversation in the chat box just now. Thanks so much. Rachel, what an absolute story of glory, and I look forward to the book. Tech phobic to tech nerd, loving this. So just become a bit of a geek, which is great to hear. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Knowing that the change you're planning for might change again before it's done and being okay with it. So it sounds to me, Iona, that sense of acceptance, actually cultivating it as a practice, perhaps as a skill, part of the skill set just now, that we're just constantly dealing with changes. So we dealt with the last one, we'll deal with this one too. Yeah. Brogan, I'm a very cuddly person by nature and I miss the hugs. I'm very much with you there, Brogan. That's it. It's just that touch, that human connection. The hugs with children at school, the hugs with our friends as well, family. Linda, thank you. Switched on all the time. And I wonder sometimes where, Linda, that comes from. Is it just that high alert? Is there a sense, and maybe at a subconscious level, where we think I'm trying to control? If I keep switched on, I'll be able to control the next thing coming. It's not necessarily a conscious thing, but it's maybe something we've become attached to. Maybe we're becoming attached to the outcomes when in fact the changes keep coming. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'll pick up on a few more here, and it's good to share, and I hope people do get a chance to connect through some of this as well. Carolyn Scott, at the moment we're getting told use this, use that, and don't have control of my class. So a lot of people as well, Carolyn, may be giving advice, but actually what do I need to strip back and know is going to work for me, my class, and what they need at this particular time when we're so disconnected. Fiona here as well, as someone who likes to be in control, I've had to force myself to practice gratitude. Yeah, get into that place. Julie as well, wanting to do everything, but knowing that in fact I can't do everything. It's okay to leave some things till tomorrow. Sometimes letting go of those outcomes, see where it takes us. Sarah as well, less panicked and anxious by constant unpredictable changes. Don't stress about the things you can't change or control. Great, thank you so much. And Drawer Lady here, I've noticed that I'm now much more empathetic towards all staff, less target driven, more people focused. Yep, targets are great if people are engaged with them and people are resourced the front of their brains to do that, but people aren't just now. So please keep sharing the comments as we go through this, because tonight's also about connection with one another. And I think through some of these comments, knowing that we're not alone, knowing that we have shared experiences is really powerful in us coming together just now. So thank you so much. Keep the feedback coming. Want to move to this idea about how we process that change and the impact that it's having on us. I just noticed here in the chat, Kaylee saying here, I was calm and organised before, but now more stressed and on edge. So a real change for Kaylee there. And I also think about that idea of what would it mean then for me to get back to a place of control? And what perhaps do I need to strip back? What can I control? What can I influence? What can I let go of at this time, Kaylee? And we're all in that boat, and maybe talking to someone, talking to a colleague, close colleague, can support us with that about what's important right now and what's not, to support me to get to that place of less anxiety. I share this in a lot of the sessions. I just think it's a really good graphic in terms of depicting how we might be feeling. During the first lockdown, a good friend of mine called me up and she said, well, Claire, how are you today on the Corona coaster? And I thought, my goodness, the impact that this COVID has had on us all. I'm very aware tonight, very aware, and through my own personal circumstances as well, I'm very aware that people have been affected very directly by COVID, with themselves being affected by it and contracting the disease, or indeed family members. My great sympathy to each and every one of you who's had to experience that. I'm also very aware of the impact it's had on us all in terms of our own different relationships with work. Some of us have had to shield, some of us have had to work in hubs, some of us have had to manage hubs, some of us have had to work in communities, and we've had to deal with all the different emotions that have gone with that. I've been working with people who've been shielding for a long time, who are frustrated and anxious and feel guilt about not being able to contribute in the same way that other members of of the team have. I've been working with people who've been working in the hubs and just saying the frustration they felt about not connecting with their own children and having to work with different children and feeling they're not giving enough to their classes. So everybody coming at this from a different place, and I appreciate that. But I also know that people have had to go through some of these emotions, but there's not been the time to decompress. And I suppose tonight I want to maybe just start the conversation about permission to feel, about permission in these coming days and weeks where we can connect with our staff teams or our groups of staff who we can feel support with, or indeed our closest colleagues whom we can decompress with. And although there's all this work going on just now, and we have these expectations and we have to keep moving forward for our children, we need to really consider the impact it is having on us. Now, for some of you, you might say, Claire, I just can't go there just now. Just too much for me to go in. That's okay. So long as you do go to that place, and if I can help in any way, please do get in touch with me. But if I can't help, I might know other people who can help and support you at this time. It's just thinking about where you need to be for yourself at this time. So John Fisher, who came up with this personal transition curve, he would use this with organisations who at least had a winning chance, the game of knowing what was ahead. You haven't been afforded that in the different schools and settings that you've been working in. You've had to drop everything with each announcement that's come and set up school online from home, or set up a whole school within a few hours of an announcement being made in June that we're all back in August. All of these things have hit you at pace. So you've not had the opportunity to process some of that. So I'm going to just give you a couple of minutes just now to do that. And some of the questions that John Fisher would ask, he would ask people, where are you today on this curve? Where were you last week? And what have you noticed about how you've coped? Now, this might be something you don't want to share, and that's absolutely fine. I'm going to keep this safe for you just now, but I do want to ask you to reflect on it. Where are you just now on this curve? Where were you last week? And what have you noticed about how you've coped? And how you've gotten to those places that, you know, have been on the up? I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. And then I've got another couple of questions just to ask on this. So what John Fisher would also ask, he would say, in any changes, there are losses and there are gains. So that's my question to you just now, if you want to share some of that just now. What have been some of the losses for you in terms of that relationship with work? And already we've had people saying, I just miss the kids, I just miss my colleagues, I just want to get back in there. But there are also some gains as well. We talked about, you know, becoming geeks in technology now, things that we thought we would never master or never had the proclivity to do such a thing. And yet we are mastering these things. So any losses, any gains that you want to share at this particular time, or indeed if you want to share how you have coped and what supported you, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much. So Fiona's got here, love the flexibility of working from home. Yeah, and I wonder what the possibilities are to harness some of that, to take some of that forward. Fiona, brilliant. Shona, it's got here, lost some freedom to be creative, but gained more empathy for others. Yeah, and it's finding again, Shona, that sense of autonomy where we can be creative. What are the possibilities as we start to make our way back? Great. Linda, I've really valued having a supportive team around me. Brilliant. So those connections, recognising what matters to us and knowing the gains we've got. And Jill here, I love this, so great. I'm generally a calm person, happy to compromise and work with others, but as a new DHT, I'm finding that hostility, which is really not me, is creeping into my actions more than I like. Yeah, I suppose there's something there, Jill, about emotions that go through us. I was reading somewhere recently that emotions only stay in our bodies for 1.5 minutes. It's what we do with them then. It's how we then want to hold on to them. But of course, as human beings, we have this wonderful function in our brain where we can ruminate for hours on those emotions and what they all mean to us and all the different significances we can take. What does she really mean? I know she said that in the text, but what does she really mean? What was she really saying to me? What does she mean by that? So, yeah, knowing that the emotions pass and knowing that we've got choices with what we do with some of those emotions can be helpful as well. I'm just going to catch up with some of these comments as well. Loss of face-to-face contact, absolutely. But gain the flexibility, being able to spend more time with my own children. I'm hearing this a lot as well, and that's great that we have those connections with our own children. So please keep the comments coming. I will come back to some of these as we go through, but I think it's so important that we share and build that sense of connection and community this evening. So we've had to process a range of messages externally. Although in August we came back to a sense of recovery, I was also hearing messages from people by, say, September and October, when they started having attainment meetings, that they thought, hang on, I thought it was still recovery, or is it now business as usual? And then as we came into maybe late November, December, oh, hang on, is there a rumour that lockdown's coming? What's going to happen? So all of that messaging externally has been really confusing at times, has maybe kept us in our heads. But I also think about, what have we now habituated to and begun to internalize, which is resourceful? And what is it we've internalized that is no longer resourceful or not currently resourceful for us? One of the things that I'd like to pick up on just now is that second thought bubble on this slide. Knowing what is needed versus knowing what I or we can actually provide. I'm very attuned to this when I'm in coaching sessions with people just now. People's level of expectations, educators' levels of expectations about what they know children need, what they know they want to provide regarding the learning and the reconnection and the recovery, versus what is physically possible in this universe where we have to deal with time and space and energy levels. And that causes us moral injury, I think, as educators, because we know we want the best and yet we can't get there. And sometimes we can feel the guilt, which is unresourceful in itself, but it's a default place we go to, or we can feel that we are not making the inroads we would like. There's a whole host of emotions we can go through. And that moral injury is also shared in other professions. The NHS for many years, and many doctors, nurses and NHS workers have spoken about that moral injury, where they know what is needed versus knowing what they can provide. And I think an example of that right now was the fact that the NHS is so focused on COVID and has had to cancel operations and cancel other opportunities to connect with their patients with other needs, which are really becoming much more urgent as every day goes by. And yet this is all they can do. And I do wonder, regarding ourselves as educators, there's a very unhelpful story just now about catch-up, this narrative of catch-up, which I'll get to later. And that 1.5 minutes that narrative of catch-up is going through me just now, I'll process it and get through to the other side. So there's something where we can very easily get stuck in our heads and stay there. But we need to stay grounded for our children and for ourselves. We need to cultivate that calm. And Emma Sapala, in her book on the happiness track, talks about noticing when those stress levels are starting to peak in our bodies. Some of us feel it in our tummies, some of us in our chest, in our throats, in our heads, in our necks, our shoulders. So how do we get out of our heads? And how do we just get into our bodies? And the very simple answer to that, according to Emma Sapala, is by breathing, because it's something we can always come back to, something we can rely on in every single moment to bring us to a place of groundedness. So what I'd like you to maybe do just now is just to get yourself into a comfortable position and just breathe with me. Breathe in your own way, but breathe deeply and just allow yourself to get to that place of a little bit more towards the relax, the rest and digest. So let's do some breathing together. Just breathe in and breathe in a long, deep breath if you can. Maybe do a count for 3 or 4. And then just breathing out, just letting it all come out. And as you exhale, just think about releasing all that tension, releasing all that stress. Then breathing in again, taking in that resourceful breath of calm. And just exhaling it in your own way, in your own pace. Just releasing the stress. And then another breath. Just exhaling all of that anxiety, all of that needless pressure just now on a Tuesday evening coming up for 8 o'clock. That last breath just now, breathing in. Oh, just exhaling it. Oh, great. And maybe just starting to feel a little bit of our difference in our bodies. Just feeling our shoulders go down a bit. Just feeling our tummies relax, or our heart space starting to maybe just shift a little, maybe broaden and expand. So finding ways in every moment to practice the pause, to be mindful, to take that breath that will get us into that resourceful place. Because when the events change and we know what a pace of change they change at, where are we defaulting to? In a book by Pittman and Carroll, they talk about rewiring your anxious brain. And I've spoken about this before. I suppose I think it's relevant now to talk about it because I know there's been a lot of anxiety out there. Rightly so, understandably so. But what they talk about is this idea that we have cultivated habits that now serve as our default place. So for many, many years, we have had an event happen in our lives. We've had a thought result from that and then a resulting emotion. And then we've behaved in a certain way, which has triggered ourselves, triggered others as well around us to also have thoughts and emotions and behave in certain ways. So tonight, I want you just to reflect on what have you noticed during this crisis has been that default place? And have you noticed a shift in it? Have you noticed if your default has been more anxiety or negativity or even anger, more so than usual? Our colleague said there earlier about the kind of hostility. There's nothing wrong with your emotions. Your emotions are just your guidance system. But what our emotions do then is they can provide us with an opportunity when we notice them to make choices, to decide what we want to do with those emotions and how they will galvanize our efforts to act in a certain way, which will be resourceful for us. And to do so, we need to practice maybe new habits to change some of our default. And the good news story in rewiring your anxious brain is that you can do exactly that. You can rewire this. It just takes the practice. So I'm really focused on this idea of our thoughts are central to our self-care. That when I have those really pesky thoughts of not being good enough, if I can observe that that's what it is, become an observer and noticer of my thoughts, I can then start to do something about them. I can then start to get really resourceful about not just the thoughts I'm having, but the thoughts I want to have and the feelings I want to have around that. There's a coach, a lady called Byron Katie. She's American. There's so many of these coaches are, these wonderful inspirational coaches are. And she talks about doing the work. And she talks about that inner landscape, how we need to do the work on ourselves at times. But she talks about it in a way where it's not onerous, it's not difficult. It just takes small shifts in our thinking to do things differently. And if we think differently, we then can feel differently and behave differently. And even the world around us can start to change a little bit. So it stops us defaulting to those unresourceful places. And it gets us thinking about what is more resourceful for me to think about at this particular time. What's my intention now when that thought's come up? And what's my attitude towards myself? If self-compassion feels like a step too far, start with curiosity. Start with the curiosity of, well, my intention is I'm good at what matters most. Let's see where it takes me today. That idea of, let's see what matters most to me today and where it takes me. Because I will say this, beware of the drama for yourself just now. Stay in your power. Notice where your energy is going just now. Someone very famously said, life is a stage. My goodness. And what a drama is unfolding for us just now. But as individuals, we can also engage sometimes in a narrative that is not supporting us, not supporting our well-being, and it's draining us of our power. So think about where you're giving your precious energy to just now. Is it in a narrative that's building you up and is focusing on, I can do this. I've dealt with so many changes in this last year, and I know what Claire's saying. I do need to check in with my feelings, and I give myself permission to rest and recover. But I can also recognize that I can move through this resourcefully. I put up this diagram on the right-hand side because I think sometimes we can get caught up. It's not about a drama necessarily that we get caught up in as such. I'm not saying that people here are being the victim or rescuer. No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm really wanting to get across just now is this idea of when we are on high alert and when we're working from a place of anxiety-based, we can get terribly focused on the problems, and we can forget that we're here to create. Our whole job as educators is to be creators. It's to create opportunities, it's to create possibilities for our young people. And therefore, what are the outcomes that we need to focus on at this particular time, which can be fueled by my passion as an educator, as opposed to putting my energy and focusing on what I can't fix and the problems. You know, that idea of catch up, you know, we're focusing on the problem. That's my issue with the catch up narrative. We're focusing on the problem. Whereas, what are the possibilities to do work differently, to do school differently? Plenty of opportunities, and driven by passion, not by that anxiety. So, feeling the emotions and doing it anyway, I want to come to this idea of you're allowed to feel. In fact, it's imperative that you feel. And in fact, Jennifer Nias, how many years ago, 25 years ago, was writing a paper about thinking about feelings in teaching and the emotions that take place in teaching. And she was talking about the permission we need, and we need the freedom to face ourselves, to be whole persons in the classroom. Our difficulty is the dissonance sometimes. We would love to have the freedom to face ourselves in front of people, in authorities, in Scottish Government, in so many different places, in SQA, to say this is how it's impacting on us, and we know what's needed. Let us do this. And we're not always afforded that. But it's recognising who are the people we can face ourselves with at this time, when we can keep it safe for ourselves and it can support us. So I think about this idea of, are we breaking down sometimes when things just feel overwhelming and it's so onerous? Or are we actually reaching a point of breaking through something that's just been pretty difficult? And ways to face ourselves are things like just keeping some sort of diary. And I'm not talking about, you know, Samuel Pepys and the Great Fire of London here. I'm just talking about a few notes every day, just to show yourself that you're processing this, you're checking in with yourself. Obviously, I would advocate coaching. I think it's a marvellous thing to do. But there are different ways in which we can approach coaching. It can be through a critical friend, a really good friend. And also, as I say, notice the habits. Notice when anxiety is visiting you, not that you're anxious, because that's when you over-identify with an emotion. Emotions come and go. They just remind us, of how we're feeling, how we wish to align with a situation, and give us opportunities to choose how we wish to take things forward. And this shall pass, you know, the 5 times 5 rule. Will it matter in 5 minutes, this thing I'm focused on? 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? What is it that matters? And I want to turn to this now, the heart of a teacher. This is close to my heart. I am a teacher by trade. I know I'm doing coaching now, I understand that, but my goodness, when I opened this book by Parker Palmer called The Courage to Teach, when I read the opening lines from this, I wept when I first read this, because it just resonated with me. And no matter how you come into the profession, no matter what your motivation is for coming into this profession, that left-hand side quote will resonate with you. And at your heart, what is it that sustains you at this particular time? What is this? And I would talk about the joyful moments. I would talk about the coming through that thicket and recognising how we've connected, how we've made that difference, and that teaching is the finest work I know. You know, at the start of this session today, Lorraine's, said about how I'm all about feeling good, teaching well. I actually think it's that simple. I think we've made things far more complex. And I think it's about getting back to that basic principle of when it feels good, it's going to come from that good place in me, and it's going to connect, and it's going to make a difference to my young people. So this idea of feeling good, teaching well, when I've done those sessions, one of the things I'll say to people, questions, and some of you will recognise this, have been in sessions with me before, I'll say to people, what is it that makes you feel good about your teaching? And honestly, if it was Family Fortunes, you know, that game show where it was like, you said, the board said, the top answer is always the light bulb moments, or making a difference and knowing I've connected with the pupils. That's what this is about. And although there's going to be the element of the catch up, whatever that means, but there's going to be the focus on the learning, it cannot come without the reconnection. It cannot come without the reconnection with ourselves first and foremost, and then the reconnection with our young people just now. So if you started this week with your primary one class thinking, what's my agenda? And thinking, why is this not working? Maybe the agenda has to be about that reconnection and taking your agenda from the lead of the children. So questions I want to ask you just now, and I'll catch up on some of my homework just now in the chat box. When did you last connect with yourself as a teacher? And just take a moment to reflect on not just your thoughts and emotions, but where did you feel it in your body? Where did you feel that joy? And what impact is this experience? What did it have on others? What did you notice in your kids, your pupils, your students? What did you learn about yourself? So just give you a moment without me talking over you. Sorry. Chance to reflect. Please forgive me as I catch up on scrolling some of these messages. It's absolutely brilliant to hear from you. Today in primary 2, teaching makes my heart sing. That's brilliant. And in a time where we can't do much singing, Sarah, I'm delighted that at least something is singing today, and it's your heart. That's the main thing. That's brilliant. What else have we got today? Iona. Oh gosh, sorry, I've lost you, Iona. Yesterday morning, welcoming our nursery children back, seeing their smiles again as they got to work playing. iPhone to everyone. iPhone to the world. Totally agree. I had planned so much yesterday about getting together with the children. And we spent 30 minutes talking about those who'd lost teeth since Christmas. This is the joys of teaching. The children can lead me. I think that's a tremendous point to make about how much we are planning at this particular time. Please take those expectations off yourself just now. If you're planned for this week and if you're planning for next week, plan half the amount you would normally do. I promise you this, the unknown workload is going to hit us all between the eyes every single week in these coming weeks. Unknown workload is going to come in the form of different edicts coming through. It's going to come in the form of emails from parents who are concerned about children starting back and how are they getting on. It's going to come in the form of children just feeling okay the first few days, but it's feeling a bit odd again. So can I just ask you to lower those expectations of yourselves just now in terms of what you would normally plan, and think about that reconnection, getting the children to lead you just now. I think is a good way forward. And I mean that for all the ages and stages, not just our youngest children, all of our students at this particular time. Huge appreciation there for the management team. Saw that earlier there. Excellent stuff. Our managers are going through this too. I've been speaking to plenty of them just now. Let me come back to some of the slides just now. I think it's more important in this session that you continue to connect like this. It's great. Something in the book that really resonated with me in The Courage to Teach, and I turned to Parker Palmer just now, and he says this: it's not enough to ask about our why. We need to focus on our who and who we are. And he talks about this idea of how can the teacher's selfhood become a legitimate topic in education and in our public dialogues and educational reform. And that's a massive question. I don't think we're asking that in our profession just now. We're just talking about staff well-being, and we're just hoping that, could somebody maybe do staff well-being just now? Be really helpful. Really not knowing what it is that means to us and what we really need right now. And that's why it's important that we check in with ourselves and process what it is that we truly need at this particular time. Prevalent coaching themes that are coming up for me just now are these things on the right-hand side. I believe we need to know exactly who we are and where we're responding from and what matters to us as individuals and as educators right now, so that we can be in that best place to connect with our why. Because we perhaps were able to connect with our why easily before the pandemic, but has the pandemic shifted some of that why? Has the pandemic shifted how we go about some of that why? And therefore, what I'm seeing more and more of in the coaching sessions I have is this idea of people coming to me all of a sudden just not feeling confident, and yet before COVID, absolutely brimming with self-confidence in who they were as leaders, as educators, and yet that's gone. But what is it that's shifted? It's not the why in terms of we know we still want to make the difference to children. But it seems to me our own sense of what matters or what we connect with or our own heart space is maybe just feeling a little bit out of kilter with the expectations. And we seem to be led more externally without rooting ourselves and grounding ourselves in the heart of who we are as educators and what matters to us. I think it's only then that we can decide this is the best place to respond from. If you think about that initial decision you made to become a teacher, it perhaps wasn't as a result of what everybody else said around you, although you might have had a bit of that input. Surely it came from a place of, this is right for me. And I think we need to go back to that basic principle of what is right for me at this particular time. And connecting with that. How do I connect with the heart of who I am as that educator? Because surely this is about creating coherence for us, making sense with what is happening just now. Okay, how does it align with my values? But also, how does it align emotionally with what feels good for me as an educator? And instead of me feeling that I'm efforting, if I'm just responding or indeed reacting to all these external demands, where's my inspiration? Where's me in all of this? And where is the connection with how I recover, as well as how my class recover, how we recover together? And where I am noticing that I am making the most difference in the work that I do with my children and where I am responding from. Because I think who we think we are at this particular time is impacting on our well-being. So who we think we are, we've got to get really clear about that, the thoughts that we're having about ourselves just now. And perhaps tonight is an opportunity just to start some of that discussion. And I'm very happy to follow up with Step and with yourselves in having a further and maybe a much more interactive session where people can unmute mics and we can have more discussions. I'll be really up for that in the coming months. But thinking about this, just as our colleague said earlier, instead of thinking of all the planning I have to do, how do I meet my pupils every day? How am I connecting? And where am I meeting my pupils every day? From where within myself? And considering that, because my sense of self-efficacy, where it is I'm making a difference, is very connected to who I am, my sense of self-worth, my sense of self-esteem. And I know this because of the coaching sessions I'm having with people every single day about maybe just that loss of alignment of all that stuff out there. Let's get back to how you resource yourself from that heart-centered place and who you need to be right now for your pupils. Someone said earlier there about being creative and being free to express yourself as an educator. Certainly when policies are being sent to us just now and we're having to do this and there's testing for this, that and the next thing, then that freedom can feel very eradicated very, very quickly. So where can I put my attention and my energy on what is making the difference to me feeling that I'm expressing myself as an educator? And also, what is my place in my team right now in terms of what do I contribute and what do I expect to receive? And when I say what do I contribute, I'm asking that really positively. You know, really consider about the fact that people need you. As much as you need them, you make such a difference to the lives of your colleagues as well as to your children. So what is uplifting you about that role that you play just now? Is it the way you give? Also what you receive from that and receive from others. So I'll just pause for a moment there and ask you just to maybe give some feedback on any of those questions that have resonated with you just now. Any comments that you want to make just now? And I'll go through comments to see if I've missed any questions. I hope not. But I'll make sure I come back to some of that if that's the case. So many people going off on tangents during lessons, which is great to see, because this is what the children needed. Donald, thanks so much. A sense of autonomy, empowerment to be myself is so crucial to my well-being. And I just wonder, Donald, it's not for you to answer, but just for you to think about, right, let's put my focus on where I can cultivate that more of, and in which areas, you know, how do I do that as I move forward? And where do I establish my sense of self within the work that I do in a time of chaos and lots of things happening around us? Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Donald. Superb. So please keep the comments coming. I'll move to this next kind of major idea before we finish up tonight, because this is really, I suppose, some of the ideas I'd like to leave you with today. I've got that quote up from Parker Palmer, that idea about your selfhood. How does it become a legitimate topic in the work that we do on a day-to-day basis? 3 questions I started to ask myself in my 4th year of teaching, because all of the wonderful systems that I had in place from day to day, year to year, just started to become rather onerous, because I wasn't kind of getting rid of systems that no longer served me. I just tried to keep building on top of what I'd always done, and kind of got really messy and a bit overwhelming. So I started to strip things back, and the 3 questions I would ask myself, first of all, was, what's the purpose of this thing that I have to do right now? The second question was, who's asking for it? Sometimes that takes a bit of a priority at times, and that's where sometimes we can lose our sense of empowerment, but maybe sometimes things have to be done. But the third question was vital to me. How can I do this thing in a way that will support my self-care? So I think that for me is summed up, or sums up some of that thinking about how do we bring teacher well-being into work every day? How does that become a bit of a focus? It's in thinking about the tasks I have ahead of me and what I can do and how I do it in a way that supports my sense of self and supports my well-being. Now, I appreciate today or tonight, I've not done all the kind of practical things about, to-do lists, etc. But I wanted to start, as opposed from a place of a deeper thought process about who you are, getting back to those basic principles of the heart of who you are. But I'd ask you to consider now that relationship with work, and that relationship with work in terms of, what do you believe you deserve? What do you believe you deserve as an educator? And coming from a place of service, does that place of service mean that you give and give and give till there's nothing left of you? Or to be truly in a place of service in a relationship with work, is it about giving in a way that continues to replenish you and also affords you the rest and recovery times that you need right now? So there's always been that external stuff. There is the internal alignment that we have with that external stuff. And there's the effects of the pandemic and lockdown that might have shifted some of that. So in these last few moments, I'm going to skip a couple of slides if you'll excuse me just now. I've got an exercise here which you can try out for yourselves and a bit of reflection. But I suppose I do want to finish with this idea about your relationship with work and your relationship with your pupils. Where are you meeting each pupil every day? What are the possibilities to do work differently? What keeps you connected? How are those connections making others feel good? And what's giving you a greater sense of self-efficacy that you're achieving at this time? So stay grounded, use your heads and hearts, discern the real needs at this time, connect with what matters most, and in staying heart-centered and nurturing with compassion, look at how much you can achieve every day. Someone spoke to me the other day about not the to-do list, but the ta-da list. I said, what's your ta-da list? And she said, that's the list I make every day of all the things I have done. And she said, and sometimes that's longer than my actual to-do list, which is really great. So I'm going to stop there with a minute to go. Please forgive me for maybe chatting too much. But I just wanted to share some thoughts and ideas to provoke your thinking around your own well-being and how you can support yourself at this time. You'll get all these slides sent on to you, I'm sure. I'll make sure that happens. And please do get in touch if I can help in any way. And there's more for us to discuss down the line. I've no doubt about it, but thanks for your time tonight, and I hope that's helped.
Hello, I'm back. So I did promise that you would feel a bit uplifted, and I see that we're more than all the way there. Now more than ever. And that didn't really seem possible. We're really grateful for you sharing your thoughts and your supportive ideas, and I absolutely loved loads of it. But to Dallas at the end really got me. So I know you also mentioned another interactive session, and that is something I think we should absolutely definitely follow up with. I think if STEP is anything, then it is a network of people, and they've really appreciated tonight being heard and being listened to as well from you. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And again, I want to thank Claire so much on behalf of the attendees and on behalf of the committee, and for very generously giving your time. So colleagues, before you go, thanks for attending. A recording of tonight's session will be available in due course. And if you missed the previous sessions, they are available now via the Scottish Teachers for Enhancing Practice YouTube channel. Those are words I never thought I'd say. So there's also going to be a survey posted in the chat, and we would really appreciate your feedback on that. And details of the next session will be sent to your inbox pretty soon. But all I want to say, Claire, like in a very heartfelt way, is thank you so much, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Step for having me, and to all the participants tonight. An absolute joy. I mean that to be with you. So thank you very much.
Great chat. Thank you. Good night, everybody.